So, I want to introduce everybody to myself, Tom Calloway. I am a paranormal investigator. I am an amateur UFO ufologist, I should say, and I love everything about the paranormal, supernatural, and UAPs and UFOs have been, well, let's face it, have been taking off lately. Their stock has been on the rise ever since the summer, and many more people have their eyes in this area than ever before, and I would like to bring awareness to UFOs, UAPs, and also the paranormal. This podcast might be slightly different from other, paranormal, supernatural podcasts that others may have. What we do here is we label things paranormal. We let you know why it's labeled paranormal. We want to have a space where anybody can listen to, and if you're afraid to ask questions about paranormal, or you don't want to know, or you don't want to seem like crazy, what have you. We're not going to use that word here, but other people might. If you want to seem like, I would like to know more about this, we're your guys to learn about subjects from events to case studies, interviews, and different discussion topics, drill downs on specific things. We're going to bring you all the information that you need to know about why it's labeled paranormal. So there you are. There's a little theme about us. There's how we want to approach this podcast and keep everything in that realm and vein and theme. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Mark, who can introduce himself and talk a little bit about why he wanted to join this and what his goals are for what this podcast will be. So Mark, take it away.
Hey, my name is Mark Way. I've been studying UFOs and metaphysics for over 15 years now. And with the recent revelations with whistleblowers like David Grush, I actually started, I guess you could call it a paranormal support group for people to come and talk about their paranormal experiences without judgment in a safe space. And I just felt like it's time to start talking about this stuff publicly because it feels like this is all ramping up. My main focus is technology. I'm obsessed with technology. I see UFOs as a type of advanced technology, and I believe modern science tries to disregard metaphysics into the equation, and I think we need to bring it back. We need to start talking about these subjects and how technology evolves in different ways, in ways that are way outside the box. And yeah, I wanted to join this podcast because I want to hear listener stories too. I want to go over these subjects, and I want to break down these subjects in a way that's much more digestible for the average person, because a lot of people are turned off by these subjects. And like I said, I think it's time to start talking about them and making them more easily digestible. But back to you, Tom.
Excellent. Thank you. So we're doing things a little different here. Typically, when you have a co-host podcast, they're going to come on and say, oh, I've known them since birth and know that and all of that. Mark and I, are going to grow up alongside you, so stick around for that kind of fun. Because, Mark, 3 months ago, did you even know who I was?
Nope. We just met in that group.
We did.
Yeah.
So we have similar ideologies. We have different ideologies, but you're going to hear two different points of view on most topics, and you're going to be able to, I guess, decide whichever one sounds the best for you, or if we're completely out there and you don't want anything to do with either one of our ideas, which is perfectly fine. And honestly, they're probably more often than not, you're going to decide that way. So let's get into our first topic. This episode is about the whistleblower phenomenon, or the whistleblower testimony case about UAPs that happened over the summer. And a lot of information has been slowly trickling out from that David Grush whistleblower case and his testimony to Congress. And, let's say you're not into UFOs or anything like that. Do yourself a favor and just listen to some YouTube highlights or anything like that, because you really owe it to yourself. There is some phenomenal information that comes out of there that does challenge even the most staunch UFO investigators about, are we even on the right track? Some things we, believe were pointed out there, but then there was also stuff that me personally, I was like, I never even thought of that. So it's absolutely wonderful. Please, you don't have to watch the whole thing. It's Congress. So, but, listen to some highlights on it and really, really get well-rounded in that. But for now, what we're going to do is give you the, digestible information from this and talk about our ideas and theories behind what was going on and how the whole situation played out. David Grush has been on other media platforms since then, so please, if you wanted to, you can check out all of his stuff. We might be referencing things back and forth, but if we do, we'll try to keep in mind that you're listening and you might want to listen to more of it at wherever it may have been. So let's talk about how this came about. David, in a nutshell, was afraid. He was afraid, and there was many, many reasons to be afraid. What he did was something that took a lot of courage, a lot of bravery, because whistleblowers can happen in any field, any type of business, organization, what have you. But for him to do it in the federal government as a former military man really took a lot of courage to me. So he's went in front of Congress. He dropped a pretty big bombshell, and I'll quote this word for word, that Congressman Tim Burchett asked Grush if he had any personal knowledge of people being harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal extraterrestrial technology. Grush replied one word: yes. Burchett also asked Grush if he had heard anybody being murdered, and Grush answered, and I quote, "I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities." If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know there, I don't know what will. But this man was afraid. This man was denied access, and this man had proof, solid proof of a UFO cover-up for a UFO retrieval process and reverse engineering technology. Now, that idea has been out there. That's not so new. Other people have had ideas and theories about that. But to have it on record, to have it in congressional testimony, and to be a part of a public record, I believe that was the first time that had happened.
He was under oath. All three of them were under oath. Yep.
Okay. So maybe not a full trial, but still under oath and giving testimony like a trial.
Yeah.
And him pointing out different areas, different names, different subjects, we'll get into that as we go in this podcast, but him pointing those out to Congress really did a lot for him in terms of not only getting the whistleblower and getting disclosure out there, but also helping him. He has a family. He has a wife. I'm not sure. I believe he has kids. But this man was very, very scared for his family's life. On the latest episode of Joe Rogan, I'm sorry, not one of the latest episodes of Joe Rogan podcast, he was on there and he admitted to Joe that they did, in fact, prove to him that they can touch him at any time. He didn't get into what that meant. He didn't get into any other detail. But if he believes it, as somebody who's an insider, I'm likely to believe it too on the outside. I'm aware there's smoke, there's fire, and you'll find all that out during this relationship we have listening to this podcast. So I know I'm going to turn it over to Mark, who has some good data for us, and we're going to discuss why this should be important to you. Go ahead, Mark.
So the real question is, for the average person who doesn't care about UFOs at all, and is looking at this from the outside, a lot of people have heard of whistleblowers coming forward before about the UFO subject. Well, this is a little different. He went under oath in front of congressional testimony, which means if he's lying, they could throw his ass in jail. That's it. He's done. You know what I mean? And 6 months later, that has not happened. He's still standing. Okay. So why should we believe David Grush? Well, I'm going to pull up his resume just to have it there. Hold on 1 second. There it is. Okay. Just so we can all see this. So there's 3 important things here. He was one of the leads for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, which means that they're the agency that basically monitors. They map our planet they have an immense control over the satellite systems of the military. And he was tasked by that agency to search for evidence of UAPs. That was his job. Second, he was also a lead for the National Reconnaissance Office, which basically controls all of our reconnaissance satellites. So two agencies that are operating normal satellites and reconnaissance satellites. Third, he specialized in advising on SAPs, on special access programs, which means he was the guy that knew how to take classified information and put it into a briefing and explain that classified information properly to the right parties, like White House staffers, the president himself, and we can get into later why the president would need to be, given information that's classified beyond him, because there is information that goes above the president. So, in ufology and outside of ufology, we always have this construct of like, why doesn't one of these guys just come forward? These deep intel guys, why don't they just come forward and spill all the beans? Well, here he is. This is it. He's the real deal. Like, this is the guy. And he came forward, and like I said, 6 months later, he's standing tall. And what do you think about that angle, Tom?
I love that angle because you're right. This is the guy. This is who we've kind of been waiting for, whether it's our community, but maybe people outside of our community saying, well, how come nobody's come and said anything? How come we don't have anything definitive? And we can come up with answers like, cover-ups, plausible deniability, things of that nature. But this is a man who was on the inside and not just a soldier on the front lines. This guy was in deep in many, many different organizations, many different projects, many different missions, I should say. So for him to come out and have this kind of resume, and I think is very, very dangerous for people who want to keep information still on the inside. The whistleblower and going in front of Congress, I do believe, was for a reason. And if somebody this important is getting close to the information and wants to disclose, maybe his foresight wasn't too far off.
Right. And that sort of brings me to the next subject of, okay, so he's right. He comes forward and he has all this information. Why does it matter that we're back engineering UFOs? Allegedly, why does any of this even matter? How does this even impact me? And the fact of the matter is, it's all about congressional oversight. I just want to pull this one up too. Here we go. Hold on. There it is. Okay. So the Pentagon failed its sixth audit in a row. Okay. $2 trillion is unaccounted for. Where is that number? I can't exactly find that number in this article, but essentially, $2 trillion is unaccounted for. And that's our taxpayer money. Mm-hmm. So you take that into account. This article came out November 16th. 2 weeks later, we get this article. The CIA secret office, the Office of Global Access, a wing of the CIA, has conducted UFO crash retrieval missions. And we can debate all day to the legitimacy of this. But if you followed ufology, this is where this all ends up at. Okay. So I think it's safe to assume that, there are immense amounts of taxpayer money not going to help you, not going to help welfare, not going to help people. Mm-hmm. It's being taken away from you, funneled without congressional oversight into developing exotic technologies that you are not allowed to have. That's what's happening, and whether it's UFO technology, whether there's aliens, doesn't matter. An immense amount of money is being funneled away from the American taxpayer to fund technology that you are not allowed to have. And we're not
even allowed to know about either.
Yeah.
That's what I want to point out in this too, is 9 crash sites all over the world. So we're worried. Why are we paying? We hear it all the time on the news. Why are we paying money to outside or countries and this and that? Well, here's something we're doing too. That we're going and grabbing things from other countries. And if you don't think that any part of our money is being exchanged with other governments, then you're just nuts. This is exactly where a lot of the money's going. Office of Global Access has been collecting alien spacecraft since 2003. So 20 years. Has it been going on before then? Probably. It just hasn't been organized like how it is here.
Yeah.
So, money failing an audit, it's almost a joke because the people who are auditing you are the people that are giving you clearance to go ahead and do that money. Is anybody going to get in trouble for it? They'll write a whole long list of punishments that they gave people that don't mean jack shit. It does not mean anything.
Yeah.
You don't pay your taxes. You have to pay your taxes on a timely matter, plus a little interest, plus a little lateness penalty, plus a little whatever it is.
Or you're going to jail.
Them, they can spend their money on whatever.
Yeah.
And we'll tell you about a few of these things, but where else does the money go? It's not, I don't know, that's secret.
Yeah. And these people are fundamentally operating above the law. And what really, you want to take the UFO angle out of it, David Grush presented to Congress that there is immense congressional, oversight that's missing here. Congress has no idea what's going on with these programs, and that is not something Congress likes to hear. Now, if you watch that testimony, even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, her question, I believe, was, if I were to look, where would I look? And David Grush provided that information to those senators. So now that's given the bloodhounds the scent. So this is just going to keep rolling. This is going to keep ramping up. And, I don't know if anybody's heard that the Schumer amendment has supposedly been gutted. And I agree, it's been gutted to an extent. But the fact of the matter is it's still passed to a degree which facilitates even more whistleblowers to come out. The version that did pass still basically it puts the ball in the intelligence agency's court. But if any of these whistleblowers know about this information, they can now safely come forward with it, and
absolutely.
That's my angle on it.
Real quick, the Schumer Amendment is also known as the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023, which in its glory, if it were, in a perfect world, would allow for, or not allow, but mandate disclosure on these retrieval craft, and set up in an office where individuals would be able to phone in sightings, things of that nature, which would have to be disclosed, as well as setting up, I believe, a 10-panel committee to investigate all of those alleged from previous, and also obviously going forward in the future. That was gutted under a guise of national security. They didn't want all of the information getting out of what they were doing. And then the disclosure, they will disclose things that have nothing to do, or nothing. It's all going to be considered that, but what they are allowing people to disclose are, let me find it right here. Okay, so they will disclose everything with exemptions for UAP records that threaten national defense, compromise national intelligence, threaten sources and methods of intel, or compromise any federal agent. Which, if you were to just tell me that, fine. Yeah, no, I agree with that. But we know it's not going to be playing. They're not going to play fair with that. If you limited it to that, I don't think anybody would have a problem. But when you start, when a craft goes down, and it's a hint of radiation, they're going to call it nuclear engine, which would threaten national security.
Yes.
So you wouldn't hear anything about that.
Yes.
They would need to crash here in a 1995 Ford Taurus before, and that's how they'll tell you about those cases. If I were to give you just an analogy, they would have to crash here in nothing, and then maybe they'll disclose that information. Are we, I could be being paranoid, you know what I mean? I could be being very paranoid, which is a very big possibility. Don't get me wrong. But if they have those specific words written into this Disclosure Act, I tend to believe they're going to use it, and not just use it once or twice. It's going to be the overwhelming majority. My best guess, 95% of things are going to fall under that.
Yeah.
And 5% is what we're going to hear. That's just my best guess.
And it's interesting that you brought that up, because that's exactly where I was going to go with the radiation, is that, and David Grush brought this up as well, that we have a classification level that's above the president, and it's contained within the Atomic Energy Act of 1954. Anything that emits nuclear anything falls under this act, and David Grush actually had the clearance to go through these things, but the president doesn't, or maybe some presidents don't. And that's how this whole system is managed. You ask, why can't he just tell us everything right now? That's the most common thing, and it's kind of like, I get why the average person would ask it, but for government officials to ask that makes me question their motives. Because the reason why he can't just spill the beans on everything right now, well, we just had a president stand trial for having classified documents. We're putting presidents on trial for having classified documents, okay? This is not a game. This is the highest level of classification. This is basically directly from the Manhattan Project. The framework developed during the Manhattan Project developed the Atomic Energy Act, and threw all of these subjects directly into black projects. And they will never see the light of day unless we have these new processes come forward. And like I said before, I think we're going to see that now. We are going to see more whistleblowers come forward. Stephen Bassett just talked about this like an hour ago. And in my opinion, Stephen Bassett has been decently accurate. And he was saying that the plan is to have a bunch of these high-level whistleblowers come out now properly, now that a portion of the UAPDA has been passed. And then because of the overwhelming amount of information that's going to come out, because imagine if you had 10 David Grush's testimonies, then it's kind of unignorable. Then something has to be done. And that's when Bassett believes that we'll see the rest of the UAPDA be passed as a separate law. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I do believe that we are going to get these very high-level whistleblowers come out now. That's my opinion.
I definitely agree. Let's shift gears into why, Mark. Why is this important? Why should we care? So when we have David Grush or any individual that does that, it's very important to him. Don't get me wrong. Why is it important to us? Why should we care? And my best answer to that would be, we should care because we are all human beings. And without getting into any kind of, feeling, anything like that, but we are all human beings, and being withheld information goes so far against how we operate,
right,
that it often invokes a reaction. What is that reaction? Anger, right? It often invokes anger with us, because why aren't you telling me everything I need to know? And in certain aspects, in certain communities, knowledge is more valuable than money, because you know something they don't, and no matter how much is in your pocket, you might not be told.
Yeah.
Like you had mentioned with presidents, some presidents, I truly believe some presidents haven't been disclosed any of this stuff, and some have.
Yeah.
And is that I don't know if it's a character thing, but it's a liability thing. You don't pass the sniff test, I guess, is the best way to go about it.
Yeah, I think that's been happening. Yeah. But
who knows?
And it's a good question that you bring up. Why does this even matter? Why, if UFOs are real, if flying saucers are real, why does it even matter? And I hear this question all the time. These goofy little, saucers flying through the air with occupants with big heads. It's like a cartoon. Whatever. I don't care. The fact of the matter is, those things, if they're real, they have an energy source that is far greater than anything that we have ever had our hands on. Okay? Now, that immediately sounds like some kind of weird utopian bullshit scenario. Like, oh, you're going to have some exotic technology that changes the world? Well, actually, you and me, Tom, have already lived through that with the internet and smartphones. We have seen technology drastically change the world rapidly. You go back to the world today compared to 2016, compared to 2012, they're already completely different worlds. Like, it's not far-fetched to state that, if we crack this energy problem, it would change the world. And it sounds sensational, but it's really not. We've experienced it before with other technologies.
I completely agree. And you're exactly right with that, with the world being different. The world's absolutely changing every single day. I don't want to bring up it was a hard time for everybody, but 5 years ago, nobody really knew the term social distancing or what that even meant or how to do it. And I bet you a lot of people didn't care what your philosophy on certain vaccinations were 5 years ago, and now it's almost a political decisive tool.
Yeah.
So the world ever changing, I don't believe was this way for many, many generations. And to your point with the internet, you had never had that way to get information out wherever it needed to go. You could move across country and change your name and live a different life. And you can't have that anymore.
Yeah.
Almost everything is on camera. The NSA, I'm sure, is recording all of this, even here. Hello, agent, whoever you are.
Sure, they're watching this.
Call in. No.
I wish. That would have been awesome.
Yeah, you guys need to stop now.
Shut this down.
Yeah. So one of your points that you said about why does this even matter was also brought up a little bit, and it was a senator who was against, or I'm sorry, it was a representative who was against, the big chunks being taken out. And David Grush even so far as went this far to say, if all of this is BS, baloney, bullshit, whatever you want to call it, what are you hiding then?
Yep.
Prove me wrong. Prove me to be a great waste of money. You know what I mean? Prove it. Prove me. I know you want to discredit me. Here's your way to do it. Go ahead. He gave them on a silver platter the method to destroy him, basically, destroy all his credibility. And rather than going that route, they're just saying, no, we're not going to even try.
Yeah. The Congress people who accepted
situation there.
Yeah. The Congress people that accepted Lockheed Martin donations are the ones that took out the fangs of the amendment. So it's like, what's going on there now, man? Like, it's not evidence, but it's like really direct circumstantial evidence now. Like, if there's nothing to hide, why are you defanging this?
You're exactly right. One thing I wanted to touch on too here is, let's get into a little bit of the theory of this, step back a little bit from the actual primary discussion of the whistleblower testimony and talk about the crash retrieval system or program that was going on and how that happened. And one of the things, in thinking about this podcast and you coming up with some great topics of interest here, one thing that jumped out to me was we can have a discussion here on why do these things crash? If they're so advanced and they come from, whether you're of the interdimensional belief, underwater belief, or distant planet, or time travel, whatever your belief is on where they are, where they come from, if they are so advanced, why do they crash here? And to me, I think we've talked about this before, not on the podcast, but just like, shooting it. But I don't think that their crashes here are so much of a failure or they're dumb, you know what I mean, or they couldn't do it here. I believe it's a product of elements. It's a product of our environment, our atmosphere, or even our dimension. So what I mean by that is, I would be, even in human beings, you have some that are smarter than others. You have some that aren't. You have some that are good in one area. You have some that are good in other areas. If we were to believe that extraterrestrials are of the same way of, different species, civilizations, whatever you want to call it, some may have elements or access to refined elements more than others. That's not unbelievable in my mind. So, if they are used to making a machine, if they are used to making equipment that can come here, whether interdimensionally, faster than the speed of light, bending space and time, whatever, once they get here, it seems to be the problem, right?
Right.
We don't know if they crash up there, if it's coming from outer space.
That
right?
is true. Yeah.
We'll never know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We'll never know whether that happened unless they get really lucky or unlucky, however you want to say it, and it stays on the straight course, and just falls as debris. We're never going to know about that. So could it be possible? Let me put it this way. If I put a human being in a bathing suit, a tank top, flip-flops, and send them to Jamaica, they're perfectly outfitted for that environment, correct?
Yep.
If I made a slight mistake calculation and thought the whole planet was like Jamaica, and then I sent them to Siberia, that's not going to work out very well, is it?
That's a good point, yeah.
That's my theory about why do they crash and still be intelligent. What do you have to say?
So, it's a great question, and it's something that I thought about a lot. It's something that everybody brings up. Like, if they're so advanced, why do they crash here? They're from another star system, so on and so forth. Well, the fact of the matter is, one, I just want to bring this up. There have been reports of these craft actually just landing and the occupants getting out and walking away from them with the doors open. Now, that's alleged. I don't know how true that is, but that indicates that indicates something else is going on. Like they're gifting the technology to us or whatever. But I mean, we'll remove that out of the equation for this. If we look at this from just a totally technological standpoint, the fact of the matter is, you're not going to design a biplane that flies in the air to fly underwater. You're not going to design a submarine to fly in the air. You're not going vehicles. You can't drive a car off of a launch pad and expect it to fly. These vehicles, as far as I've researched into this, these vehicles are purpose built. Okay, it could be that the only way to get from one planet to another is by warping space-time. And to warp space-time, you need a very, very delicate and specific design that's only meant for that. It's not like you're going to take the space shuttle, the NASA space shuttle, and do an attack raid on Afghanistan with it. These could be completely designed, purpose-built vehicles. Now, after reading military reports about these things, the saucer design itself, there's multiple different types of UFOs, but specifically the saucer design itself has been speculated to be a reconnaissance surveillance vehicle. And as we know from our military strategy, when you have drones, now we don't like our drones falling out of the sky, but if they do fall out of the sky, it's not really a big deal. They're unmanned, they're kind of designed to be expendable. So that's could exactly be what's happening here, is they send out these surveillance vehicles. If they crash, no big problem. The monkeys aren't going to figure out how they work anyway, No,
you're exactly right. They could even write a diagram, but we don't even know what language it's in, right?
Right.
They could tell us exactly step by step but if it's not in your native language, you're not going to know anything about it.
Yeah.
The almost almost like a little contact scenario there, right? From the movie.
Yeah.
We see things on paper, but it could be a 3-dimensional, Word document. We don't know.
Yeah.
So I think it's less to do with, their intelligence and more to tell with the spacecraft that are here. Anybody will tell you how unique and special the human brain is, but it will also let you walk out the door with forgetting your keys, right?
That's right.
How can we expect perfection 100% of the time out of a civilization that may or may not exist when we can't even get our own stuff right?
And that's the other thing about this. We may not be dealing with a higher intelligence here. We may be dealing with a species that simply had the right isotopes on their planet to craft such a vehicle to get here. They might even be lower intelligence than we are. They just so happen to have discovered this technology that allows them to do this.
Yes, they can discover how to warp space and time and be amazed by a lighter.
Yeah,
we don't know.
exactly.
It's just something that they do not have on their planet. And, when something's new and big enough, we're going to fear it. I believe that's human nature. It's built into our DNA. Where did that come from? That could be a whole new topic on a new podcast, or a different one.
There you go.
I think ingrained in our DNA, is something that when it's new and when it's big, we fear it. And we have to assume that if they can do something we can't do, we're going to assume it's more advanced than us.
Yeah.
And not to take anything away from, you alien sympathizers out there. I'm not saying you're dumb. So what I'm thinking is intelligence can be measured in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
They do have the proper isotopes to achieve something we don't have.
Yeah.
We have a ore mining facility down here that the original idea was to make them a little bit like us and then enslave them so they, dig up all the gold, iron, whatever it might be that they needed for their home planet, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. We love to enslave each other. So it might be built into the DNA. So, but what? Go ahead.
Well, it's just I had a little pet theory of mine that I like to call the smart dolphin theory.
Okay.
Where I don't know if you know a whole lot about dolphins, but they have whole societies. They have a language. They talk to each other. They travel in pods. They're very intelligent.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is, they'll never invent fire because there's no way for them to invent fire. And we could simply be really smart dolphins, kind of trapped on this planet because we don't have access to a certain material that they have.
Yeah. And we've all heard about different theories about that. I believe element 113 or
115,
115, yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if the perfect civilization encapsulated multiple different dimensions, eras, planets, and animals. You know what I mean? So who's to really say that? But all of that I love talking about because that's more into the theory realm of where it came from.
Right.
All of that got a major boost because of David Grush's testimony, because of whistleblowing, and because of what's going on that he had, he had the balls to stand up to Congress and say, I know this is going on. You should know too.
Yeah.
If I see you, David, ever out around, I'll grab you a beer, shake your hand. I know you probably can't tell me anything, but that's totally fine. But I think that there's more to come on this whistleblower. And for this situation here that he did is going to open the door for so many others to come down the road. And I think with that, everybody, honestly, stay tuned. because who knows where it's going to go from here. I'm waiting for the first person to come out and say, I talked to one. I would love for that to be next.
Oh man, that would be wild.
Absolutely wild.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there you have it. There's our first episode and the whistleblower trial, the UAP phenomenon, and a little bit into the theory behind what we honestly think about, different civilizations and UFOs, and what does it matter? And could they be smarter than us? Could they be not as smart as us? Who knows? But all of that wrapped up into our first show. Thank you so much for listening. Like, subscribe, go to our website, labeledparanormal.podbean.com. Check us out on Facebook at Label Paranormal. And until next time, everybody, stay safe, be kind to one another, and have a good night.
See you, everybody.